Beyond the realms of mythology, religion, philosophy, and psychology lies the domain of esoteric knowledge. These are traditions that explore hidden dimensions of reality through symbol, ritual, and direct experiential insight. Within these traditions, the eye emerges as a central symbol of spiritual transformation and hidden wisdom. Alchemy, often misunderstood as merely a primitive precursor to chemistry, was in fact a sophisticated spiritual technology using material processes as metaphors for psychological and spiritual transformation. Within alchemical texts, eye symbolism appears repeatedly at crucial stages of the great work. In alchemy, the eye is the coelum, heaven, Jung explains in Mysterium Conjunctionis. He quotes Steve's Coelum Sephiroticum. It is like an eye and a seeing of the soul, whereby the state of the soul and her intentions are ofttimes made known to us. And through the rays and the glance of heaven, all things take form. This celestial eye represents divine awareness permeating the material world, what alchemists called the quinta essentia, or fifth essence that transcends the four elements while binding them together. Just as the eye perceives without being what it perceives, this quintessence permeates matter without being material itself. The alchemical opus begins with nigredo, blackening, a dissolution stage often symbolized by a darkened or closed eye, representing the obscuration of ordinary consciousness. The famous alchemical dictum, solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate, refers to breaking down rigid perceptions before reconstructing a more fluid and integrated awareness. As the work progresses, the practitioners watch for certain visual signs in their material operations, such as color changes, luminous appearances, and crystalline formations. The appearance of multiple small luminous points was particularly significant, described as scintillae, sparks, or oculi piscium, fish's eyes. The scintillae often appear as golden and silver, Jung notes in Mysterium Conjunctionis, and are found in multiple form in the earth. They are then called oculi piscium, fish's eyes. The fish's eyes are frequently mentioned by the authors, probably first by Maurianus Romanus and in the Tractatus Aristotelis, and then by many later ones. These luminous points represented fragments of divine consciousness emerging from matter, what Gnostics called sparks of light imprisoned in darkness. The alchemist's task was to recognize and liberate these sparks, gradually collecting them into the unified gold of enlightened awareness. An alchemical emblem attributed to the philosopher Malus depicts eyes in stars, clouds, water and earth with the caption, "This stone is under you and near you and above you and around you." This suggests that divine consciousness, symbolized by eyes, exists at all levels of creation, waiting to be recognized by the initiated perception. The English alchemist George Ripley observed that after desiccation of the sea, a substance remains that shines like a fish's eye. According to the alchemist Gerhard Dorn, this shining eye is the sun, which plunges the center of its eye into the heart of man, as if it were the secret of warmth and illumination. This solar eye represents the awakened consciousness that perceives the unity underlying apparent diversity. Just as physical sunlight enables the eye to see objects, this inner light enables spiritual vision to perceive the hidden connections between all things. The fish's eye is always open, Jung notes, like the eye of God, suggesting an unblinking awareness that never sleeps or loses sight of the whole. The culmination of the great work produces the philosopher's stone, often described as containing or producing all colors. Hoggerland calls it the hermaphroditic monster that contains all colors, while other texts use poetic comparisons like iris, the rainbow, or the iris of the eye. The stone's multicolored nature reflects the eye's ability to perceive the entire spectrum, a symbol of comprehensive vision that encompasses all aspects of reality without exclusion or preference. Just as white light contains all colors, the perfected consciousness contains all modes of perception integrated into a single vision. The mysterious fish's eyes of alchemy deserve special attention as they represent a profound understanding of how consciousness operates in both fragmented and unified states. These luminous points appearing in the alchemical vessel symbolize the scattered nature of awareness before integration. Jung connects this symbolism to various traditions. The fish's eyes are tiny soul sparks from which the shining figure of the Filius is put together. They correspond to the particles of light imprisoned in the dark physis, whose reconstitution was one of the chief aims of Gnosticism and Manichaeism. This parallels the Jain concept of the Siddhasila, the realm of liberated souls at the universe's summit. The Loka world is held in the middle of the Aloka void, in the form of the trunk of a man, with Siddhasila at the top, the place where the head should be. This Siddhasila is the abode of the omniscient souls, and may be called the spiritual eye of the universe. The alchemical process mirrors the spiritual journey of fragmented consciousness returning to wholeness. Just as scattered light can be focused through a lens to create concentrated illumination, the scattered eyes or points of awareness can be integrated through spiritual practice into unified vision. He will observe it from day to day, the Mysterium Conjunctionis advises, and note its alterations until his eyes are opened, or, as the alchemists say, until the fish's eyes or the sparks shine in the dark solution. For the eyes of the fish are always open, and therefore must always see, which is why the alchemists used them as a symbol of perpetual attention. This perpetual attention represents the awakened consciousness that remains alert even during sleep. What Eastern traditions call Turiya, or the fourth state beyond waking, dreaming and deep sleep. The always open eyes of the fish symbolize awareness that never loses its luminosity, even in the darkest circumstances. Alchemy thus presents a profound vision of consciousness as both differentiated and unified, a multiplicity that can be gathered into oneness without losing its inherent diversity. The eye serves as the perfect symbol for this paradox, a single organ that perceives infinite variety, a unified awareness that comprehends multitudinous forms. Mandala appears across cultures as a visual technology for transforming consciousness and is organized around a central point surrounded by concentric circles, a universal pattern representing the relationship between the unified center and the differentiated periphery. The pupil corresponds to the central void, Bindu in Hindu traditions, while the iris represents the radiant field of manifestation. Sacred geometry extends this understanding through the Vesika Piscis, or the almond-shaped intersection of two circles, which has the same proportions as the human eye. This shape, known as the mandorla in Christian iconography, often surrounds Christ or saints in religious art, symbolizing the intersection of divine and human realms, which ultimately is the central function of spiritual vision. The triangle, another fundamental geometric symbol, appears in connection with the eye in numerous esoteric traditions. The eye of providence within a triangle combines several layers of meaning. The triangle represents the divine trinity or the three principles of alchemy, sulfur, mercury and salt, while the eye represents the unified awareness that comprehends these principles. The triangle, in connection with the all-seeing eye, writes E. Raymond Capt, is the Masonic symbol of the grand architect of the universe. This geometric arrangement suggests that divine vision operates through triadic structures, whether Father, Son, Spirit in Christianity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva in Hinduism, or thesis, antithesis, synthesis in Hegelian philosophy. The sacred geometry of the eye reveals how vision itself operates through mathematical principles. The golden ratio governs the relationship between pupil, iris, and eye socket. Logarithmic spirals appear in the iris's fibrous structure. The eye's movement follows precise geometric patterns when tracking objects. These mathematical correspondences suggest that the eye's physical structure embodies cosmic principles. It is constructed according to the same geometric laws that govern galaxies, seashells, and flower petals. Vision follows universal patterns of organization that connect microcosm to macrocosm. Across esoteric traditions, light serves as both the medium and metaphor for spiritual insight. The eye's relationship with light provides a perfect symbol for consciousness's relationship with truth, as both physical eyes and spiritual awareness require illumination to function. Again, in Mysterium Conjunctionis, Jung notes, Dawn uses the concept of the scintilla in moral form. Let every man consider diligently in his heart what has been said above. And thus, little by little, he will come to see with his mental eyes a number of sparks shining day by day, and more, and growing into such a great light that thereafter all things needful to him will be made known. This gradual illumination describes the initiatory path in many esoteric schools, a progressive enlightenment where consciousness becomes increasingly luminous as it recognizes its own nature. Descartes observed this principle from the opposite direction. Those who so become accustomed to walk in darkness weaken their eyesight so much that afterwards they cannot bear the light of day. Spiritual blindness is self-reinforcing, while spiritual vision strengthens with use. The esoteric understanding of light goes beyond physical illumination to encompass consciousness itself. The mystic Jacob Boehme described the soul as a fiery eye from the eternal center of nature, a similitude of the first principle. This fiery eye receives the light as the moon does the glance of the sun, for the life of the soul has its original in the fire. This analogy reveals how individual consciousness relates to universal awareness. The moon does not generate light, but reflects the sun's illumination. Similarly, the individual mind does not create awareness, but reflects a more fundamental consciousness that shines through all beings. In Gnostic teachings, this principle appears as the distinction between psyche, individual soul, and pneuma, divine spirit, the former receiving light from the latter. The goal of Gnostic practice was to transform the soul from opaque to transparent, allowing divine light to shine through without distortion. The Kabbalah expresses this through the concept of tzimtzum, God's self-contraction to create space for creation, followed by the breaking of the vessels that scattered divine light throughout existence. The spiritual task involves gathering these scattered sparks through acts of tikkun, repair, precisely mirroring alchemy's collection of the scattered fish's eyes into unified gold. But among the most striking visual phenomena in the alchemical process is the coda pavonis, or peacock's tail, a stage where the material in the vessel displays an iridescent spectrum of colors. This represents the differentiation of unified light into its component frequencies, which is a necessary phase before final integration. The peacock is an attribute of Juno, Jung notes, and one of the cognomens of Iris is Junonia. Just as the Queen Mother or the Mother of the Gods grants renewal, so the peacock annually renews his plumage, and therefore has a relation to all the changes in nature. This connection between the peacock and the goddess Iris, personification of the rainbow, reveals how the spectrum of colors represents the full range of perceptual possibilities. The eye that can perceive this entire spectrum has developed comprehensive vision, which is the ability to recognize the complete range of experience without rejecting any part. De Gubernatis observed, as recorded by Jung in Mysterium Conjunctionis, that the serene and starry sky and the shining sun are peacocks, the deep blue firmament shining with 1,000 brilliant eyes, and the sun rich with the colors of the rainbow, present the appearance of a peacock in all the splendor of its eye-bespangled feathers. This celestial peacock with its 1,000 eyes represents the macrocosmic vision that sees from all perspectives simultaneously, the divine awareness that encompasses all possible viewpoints. The microcosmic equivalent is the awakened human consciousness that has integrated all aspects of the psyche, represented by the peacock's tail unfolding in the alchemical vessel. The peacock's magnificent display combines the eye pattern with iridescent colors, becoming a perfect symbol for the multidimensional awareness that perceives both the unity underlying reality, represented by the eyes, and its spectacular diversity, represented by the colors. This represents spiritual vision at its most comprehensive, neither reducing multiplicity to monotonous unity, nor fragmenting unity into disconnected diversity. In various esoteric systems, the monad represents the primordial unity from which all multiplicity emerges, the metaphysical point that contains all possibilities in potentia. This concept frequently appears with eye symbolism, representing the singular awareness that perceives the entire cosmos. The emblem of the whole man, Jung quotes the Gnostic teacher Monoimos as saying, is the jot or tittle. This one title is the uncompounded, simple, unmixed monad, having its composition from nothing whatsoever, yet composed of many forms, of many parts. That single, undivided jot is the many-faced, thousand-eyed and thousand-named jot of the iota. This thousand-eyed monad represents consciousness in its most fundamental state, before differentiation into subject and object, or observer and observed. It is the emblem of that perfect and invisible man. The Son of the Man is the one iota, the one jot flowing from on high, full and filling all things, containing in himself everything that is in the man, the Father of the Son of Man. The Hermetic tradition conveys this principle through the figure of Hermes Trismegistus, a symbol of divine intellect and visionary knowledge. Hermes is closely associated with illumination, insight, and the eye of the mind. In Hermetic texts, the eye of heaven often refers to the divine intellect, nous, a radiant generative vision that not only perceives reality but participates in its creation. This active mode of seeing reflects the Hermetic idea that consciousness is not passive but creative. Perception is a kind of divine act, shaping the world through the light of awareness. The Neoplatonic philosopher Plotinus described this visionary principle as the One. The One is all things and not a single one of them. The source of all things is not all things. All things are its possession, since in the One they are not yet existent, but each has become. This philosophical concept parallels the esoteric understanding of the divine eye as simultaneously the source of all things and the awareness that perceives them. The pineal gland, the small endocrine gland in the brain, also occupies a special place in esoteric anatomy as the physical location of the third eye or mind's eye. René Descartes identified it as the seat of the soul and the connection point between body and mind. The body, Descartes teaches, is a machine, explains William Turner in his History of Philosophy, so constructed that it carries on its own operations by virtue of the impulse received from the soul, which Descartes locates in the pineal gland. This portion of the brain is selected as the seat of the soul because it is the only part of the cerebral substance which is not double. And it is evident, Descartes observes, that if the organ of the soul were double, we should perceive two objects instead of one. This singularity makes the pineal gland the perfect anatomical correlate to the unifying function of consciousness, namely the capacity to integrate diverse sensory inputs into a unified perception. Modern neuroscience has discovered that the pineal produces melatonin, regulating sleep-wake cycles and responding to light levels, literally functioning as an internalized eye that monitors environmental illumination. Esoteric traditions across cultures identified this gland as the location of higher perception centuries before its scientific investigation. The Hindu tradition locates the Ajna chakra, third eye chakra, at the brow point, describing it as the center where individual consciousness meets universal awareness. Tantric practices focus on activating this center through visualization, mantra, and energy work to awaken dormant perceptual capacities. The Taoist tradition similarly identifies the upper dantian, or crystal palace, in this region, describing it as the meeting point of several major energy channels where spiritual vision is developed. Taoist inner alchemy includes specific practices for activating the center, including the heavenly eye meditation, where attention is focused at the midpoint between the eyebrows. These traditions suggest that the physical eyes and the inner eye operate as a complementary system, the former perceiving the external world, the latter perceiving internal states and subtle dimensions of reality. The integration of these modes produces a comprehensive vision that encompasses both the objective and subjective dimensions of experience. Modern research on dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, a compound produced naturally in the pineal gland and found in visionary plants used in shamanic traditions, reveals its role in generating extraordinary states of consciousness, characterized by geometric visions and encounters with seemingly autonomous intelligences. This suggests a neurochemical basis for the third eye concept, where altered brain chemistry activates dormant perceptual capacities. Beyond symbolism, esoteric traditions developed practical techniques for expanding visual perception and harnessing its power. These range from simple gazing practices to complex rituals invoking cosmic eyes through sacred geometry, sound, and movement. The practice of trataka in yoga involves fixed gazing at a single point, often a candle flame, to develop concentration and stimulate the third eye. The steady, unwavering attention eventually produces an afterimage that persists when the eyes are closed, representing the transfer of external vision to internal sight. Scrying, also known as gazing into reflective surfaces like crystal balls, mirrors, or water, appears across cultures as a technique for accessing non-ordinary perception. The reflective surface serves as a focal point that occupies the ordinary mind while allowing deeper levels of awareness to emerge. John Dee, court astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I, used an obsidian mirror for his visionary practices, recording communications with what he described as angelic intelligences. Visualization practices form the core of many magical systems. In Tibetan Buddhism, complex deity yoga practices involve visualizing deities in minute detail, often with multiple heads and dozens of arms and eyes representing different aspects of awakened awareness. The practitioner identifies with these multiple-eyed forms to develop comprehensive vision that perceives all dimensions of reality simultaneously. While the term active imagination originates with Jung, its essence closely parallels visionary practices within the Hermetic tradition. Hermetic texts often describe encounters with divine intelligences and inner figures, experiences that occur in a state between waking perception and dream vision. In this liminal space, symbolic content becomes animated and responsive, allowing for a kind of dialogue between the soul and archetypal reality. This process bridges conscious and unconscious realms, facilitating psychological and spiritual integration through imaginative vision. These practices share a common understanding. Vision is not passive reception, but active participation. The trained eye does not simply see what is already there, but helps bring potential realities into manifestation through focused attention and intention. In Psychology and Alchemy, Jung discusses the symbolic significance of alchemical texts and their relevance to psychological processes, and cites a passage from Michael Sendivogius's Novum, Lumen Chemicum, to illustrate the idea that deeper truths are not perceived by the ordinary senses. To cause things hidden in the shadow to appear, and to take away the shadow from them. This is permitted to the intelligent philosopher by God through nature. All these things happen, and the eyes of the common men do not see them, but the eyes of the understanding intellectus and of the imagination perceive them, percipient, with true and truest vision, visu. This also aligns with Jung's concept of active imagination as a means to access the unconscious. The deepest esoteric understanding of the eye lies in the realization that seeing and being are inseparable, that consciousness is the illuminating presence through which reality is revealed. In this light, vision becomes a metaphor for awareness itself. This insight is echoed in the Kena Upanishad, which describes the Atman or self as the eye of the eye and the ear of the ear, that which does not think by the mind but by which the mind thinks. Here, the eye symbolizes not perception in the sensory sense, but the pure witnessing awareness, the ground of both subject and object. This primordial awareness is not an object that can be seen, but the seeing itself, not a thing that can be known, but the knowing itself. It is the witness consciousness that makes all experience possible while remaining itself unexperienced directly. The esoteric journey culminates in the recognition of this witnessing presence as one's true nature, a recognition that transforms ordinary perception into what the Zen tradition calls seeing with the whole body and mind. As the alchemist Gerhard Dorn observed, the magnetic stone teaches us, for in it the power of magnetizing and attracting iron is not seen with the eyes. It is a spirit hidden within, not perceptible to the sense. Similarly, consciousness cannot be perceived as an object yet attracts all experience to itself, like a magnetic field organizing iron filings. Dorn affirms again in Speculativa Philosophia that there is a certain truth in natural things which is not seen with the outward eye, but is perceived by the mind alone, and of this the philosophers have had experience, and have ascertained that its virtue is such that it performs miracles. This miraculous virtue is nothing other than consciousness itself, common sense, if you will, the luminous awareness that makes all seeing possible while remaining itself unseen. The eye that recognizes this becomes what esoteric traditions call the eye of the heart. A mode of perception that knows through identity rather than through subject-object division. In the words of the Sufi poet Rumi from Masnavi, the eyes of the heart which behold the heavens see that the almighty alchemist is ever working here. This heart vision sees essence rather than appearance, unity rather than separation, being rather than having. A mode of perception that transforms both the seer and the seen through the very act of seeing. Through this spiritual sight, we perceive not just the outer forms of creation, but the divine creative force continuously at work behind all manifestation. The almighty alchemist, whose transformative presence operates throughout existence. The ultimate secret of the esoteric eye is that the observer and the observed are not two different things, but aspects of a single reality. Like the wave and the ocean, inseparable in essence, though distinct in form. To realize this is to fulfill the ancient Greek injunction, noti sauton, know thyself, as a direct recognition of one's nature, as the awareness in which all things appear. This recognition transforms ordinary perception into what the mystical theologian Meister Eckhart described, which we encountered in the prelude. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one seeing, one knowing, one love. In this unified seeing, the ancient division between subject and object dissolves, revealing reality as it always was, whole, undivided, monadic, and luminous with consciousness. What you've just watched is one section from a 3-hour documentary that explores the symbolism of the eye across myth, mysticism, philosophy, psychology, esotericism, modernity, masonry, celebrity life, and ultimately spirituality. If this video intrigued you, the full film is available on Patreon. The journey goes far deeper for those who are ready to see. Thank you for being here.